All right, Nick Caserio press conference. I sound like Nick, losing my voice. Just got back from it. Man, I'm really into press conferences. I'm a podium critic. I wanted to hear, what Nick was going to say, and I got to tell you, this was interesting. I think there really was something to this press conference. I've been guilty of perhaps making a lot of press conferences. It's just always been in my DNA. I remember my dad, when we would watch games, I would get to stay up late to see the press conference. One of my early sports memories was Jared Wright, the pitcher for the Indians. Oops, did I say the I word? Hope I don't get canceled. I'm Cherokee though, so I think I can say it. Not sure. The I words. I'm kidding. But yeah, I remember Jared Wright when he got to start a World Series game, and me and my father just watching that press conference, just being fascinated. And that's where like the fascination with press conferences kind of began. So that's how like the podium critic thing was born, just back then. But this was a weird one. Lovie Smith last year when they hired him, I thought he kind of won the press conference just because it was somewhat stable. But this press conference today was very interesting, and it started with a Cal McNair statement. I've always said I don't think Cal should answer questions and throw himself to the wolves. I don't mean that as an insult. Just not everyone's built to go up there at a podium and answer questions. He's got some charisma. He's a likable guy, especially out of that situation. But for the most part, Cal going up there and, just answering questions, I don't think it would be in his best interest. But he did go up there and give the opening statement. And if you're new to the channel, it's the only source of daily Texans digital content, believe it or not. I'm Landry Locker, 10 to 2, Monday through Friday, Sports Radio 610 in the Odyssey app. We are the flagship station, but we're allowed to do our job. We're allowed to criticize, sometimes very intensely. And it's going to be a fun off season. The channel just started a few months ago, hoping to get it up as much as possible. So subscribe, spread the word, download the Odyssey app, and ride along with me. But this was Cal McNair's opening statement, and I was on hand, and this was Cal setting things off, bat and lead off.
And thanks for coming. As you know, Nick and I spoke with Lovie last night and informed him that we would be moving in a different direction as an organization. These decisions are extremely difficult. We appreciate everything Lovie has done for us over the last 2 years as a coach and a leader. We just felt this was the best decision for us at this time. We know the last 2 seasons have not been what we had hoped for, but we're committed to building a program that's successful long-term. We've dealt with unprecedented circumstances over the last several years, but we're excited about our future and where we're headed. We're constantly evaluating where we are as an organization, looking for ways to improve and reaching out to our fan base, whether that's exploring uniform changes or making head coach changes. We're always looking to up our game in every area and take our organization to the next level. Now we're committed to getting this one right. I have full confidence in Nick. He has led our football operation through a difficult stretch and continues to prove he's an elite talent evaluator. We talk constantly and have a plan for this process that we will execute together over the next days and weeks. For this hire, I'll be taking on a more active role in the process. Excuse me. The league has done a great deal of work to establish an equitable and inclusive head coach hiring process, which we fully support. The structured process allows us to begin the head coaching interviews virtually this week, and we can begin interviewing candidates in person after the wildcard games. As we conduct formal interviews in this process, Nick and I will operate very transparently and keep the media and fans updated on our progress. We feel there's a strong list of potential head coach candidates, and we're excited to work with them. We're going to pick the best coach to take this team into our next future with significant draft capital, salary cap space, and talented young roster. Like I said, I'm excited and optimistic about what's possible moving forward on the field. I know our team has a bright future ahead. Thank you again. I'll pass it over to Nick, who'll make a statement, answer some questions. I know you guys probably have a lot of questions. I'll be available throughout this process and answer them and provide clarity as we move along. Thank you.
All right, there we go. So that was Cal. Reactions to what Cal said. He stressed long-term. They want a long-term coach at this point, which makes sense. You don't want to go one and done, 3 straight years. So long-term. He mentioned attractive. I do think this is a much more attractive gig. The last thing a coach worth a damn wants to do is go up to the podium, and the first thing he has to talk about is his quarterback putting his wiener on a massage therapist, allegedly. Like that's not how you don't want to inherit a disgruntled quarterback and all of these sexual allegations and stuff. So it wasn't a very attractive gig. He talked about circumstances the last couple of years. I don't think you can deny that. Now, a lot of them have been his fault. So I'm not stripping Cal of blame for what these circumstances were. I think, the Deshaun Watson, the initial trade, the fact that Jack Easterby was here. I'm not going to absolve Cal McNair from fault, but when you factor in the sexual allegations, I think that kind of sets it off a little bit. There's no doubt that's unprecedented. Cal also said that he was going to have a more active role, which I've been asking for. Y'all remember it? I was beating those 2 words to death. Say it with me. Proactive evaluation. Proactive evaluation. Don't trust Nick Caserio. Don't just trust Nick Caserio just because. Biggest mistake Cal McNair has made has been trusting guys too much. Nick Caserio at this point, maybe he can get the job done, but Nick Caserio does not deserve 100% trust. So we're going to get him a little bit more active, more involved. And that means, I think, listening to the fans, listening to other resources, which we'll hear Nick Caserio talk about, but that's what that means. And he also talked about transparency. Let's be honest. It's been a real shady vibe around there for a while, around NRG. Especially when you add the POS, person of service, Jack Easterby lurking around. It's been a real sketchy vibe, not a lot of transparency, but Cal seems committed to that. So that was Cal's statement. Thought he did a good job. Podium critic grade. Let's go solid B. Solid B for sure. Can't get an A without answering questions, but again, I don't think Cal should be going up there answering questions. So he passed it off to Nick, and this is where it gets real interesting. Here's Nick Caserio's opening statement. I'll give my reaction to that, and then I'll go to the question that I asked him that he didn't really answer, but by not answering, he kind of answered. Here's Nick Caserio coming up now. Get up there, man. No vest. There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Evening, everybody. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you taking a few minutes.
Thanks, man.
Before we move forward, I think it's important for myself, I know Cal has mentioned it, to acknowledge the contributions and leadership that Lovey provided this program over the past 2 seasons in a variety of different roles.
Fair.
So a lot of respect and appreciation, admiration for Lovey as a person, what he did for our team, what he's done for a lot of people in our building. He had a very positive impact on a lot of different people.
And I think Lovey does deserve credit, holding down the fort this year. So I think this was good of Nick to do and to shout out Lovey Smith. Lovey held down the fort.
In the end, after a careful, thoughtful research and evaluation of our program, I felt that this was the best decision for our program moving forward. We have a long road ahead of us. We have a lot of work to do. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. I think our commitment is to the people in this building, this program. It's not about one person. It's not about one individual. It's about doing what's right for everybody in the building. It's about doing what's right for the players. And it's about doing what we feel is best for the organization moving forward. So certainly indebted to Lovey for his contributions and what he's done for our organization. As Cal alluded to, we've started the process of moving forward of identifying candidates to be the next head coach of the Houston Texans. We have a lot of work in front of us, but I don't think anybody's discouraged. I think we're all disappointed about where we are here currently. I would say I don't want to speak for anybody other than myself. I'm certainly disappointed in where we are. I take as much responsibility in where we are, and I'm accountable to everybody in this building. Quite frankly, I'm probably more disappointed in myself more than anybody, but I'm also excited about the opportunity we have in front of us. I think we've done a decent job of putting the organization in a good position with our team. We didn't get the results on the field that we all would have hoped for and that we all would have wanted, that we all would have expected. But I think we have an opportunity here to move forward as we turn the page. We've positioned ourselves fairly well from a draft capital standpoint. We'll have at a pretty adequate salary cap space. So in the end, it's about making the right decisions, about making the best decisions, and it's about making the decisions that we feel are best, for our team and organization. And that's my commitment to ownership. I'm appreciative of their support and the resources that they're willing to provide. And as Cal mentioned, I would say the only way to get better and improve is to look at all facets of your process and operation. And we're doing that not only on a football operations standpoint, we're going to do it on a coaching process standpoint. We've already talked about implementing some different, I would say, techniques and tactics that we feel can help us, and relying on, I would say, more members and people in the organization, making a more inclusive process and not just make it about one individual or one person. So we're trying to be proactive. We're trying to make decisions that we feel make the most sense. And we're trying to, I would say, make adjustments and modifications, because the only way you can improve your situation is to acknowledge where there may be some deficiencies, but also to recognize where there may be some strengths and where there may be some areas that we can improve our process. So that's what we're committed to doing. That's where our commitment is to the people that are here in this building. That's our commitment to the city of Houston. I would say this day, it's been a hard day. It's been a rough day, but I would say it's been a very thoughtful and productive day. I've had the opportunity to meet with essentially all of our coaches here in the building that are on staff for their feedback, for their perspective on where they see things. Had an opportunity to meet with the team and with the players and address them and be honest and very candid about where we are. And my message to them was about accountability, and that I take responsibility where we are, and that I'm committed to them and doing everything I can. This is a players' league. This is about the players. So you're only as good as the players that you have in your building, and it's a people business. You're only as good as the people that you have in your building. So our commitment is to find the best people, to utilize the resources that we have, to try to continue to move this program along in a positive direction. Say we've made some strides and some progress. We've put ourselves in a decent position. I think that's the best way to summarize it. I think it's important, and nobody wants to hear words. It's about action, and nobody's going to be happy until we have results behind that action. So that's the most important thing. So with that, I'll take some questions. Brooks, why don't you go ahead and.
All right. So that was the opening statement. Couple things stuck out there as to what exactly, Caserio had to say. He talked about how he was disappointed, and throughout the process, he uses the word accountability. Here's my thing with Nick Caserio talking about accountability and talking about, being disappointed. And he had a couple of opportunities to be specific. And Cody Davis, shout out to Cody Davis from Locked On. He's actually the one who asked my question. So I was able to adjust and ask a different question. He didn't really get specific about what he needed to be, disappointed in. So to me, when you use the word accountability, let's just look up the definition of accountability real quick. Accountability. Accountability is the fact or condition of being accountable, responsible. When you vaguely mention accountability, in my opinion, you're not being accountable. You can say, I got to do better. But what do you got to do better? Of course, everybody's got to do better. Anyone could do better. But to me, when you say, I'm accountable for this, and it's about accountability, maybe it's different behind the scenes and maybe different dialogues going on. But if you're saying you're accountable and you're not saying what you're accountable for, you're not really being accountable. You're being vague. And you're stating the obvious. Of course, things have got to be better. So the accountability thing and the disappointment, we really didn't get specifics as to what exactly he was talking about there. He mentioned being in a better position right now than they were. That goes without saying. Like anyone who wants to simplify, the 2 one and dones into this situation is just selectively doing it. I mean, and I understand any hesitation about Nick Caserio, but I mean, that's just common sense. Like it's different. We don't need to list the ways. The Watson stuff, the Easterby stuff. Again, a lot of self-inflicted stuff. The cap space, 75 million dead cap, the limited draft assets, not very many young, talented guys on the roster. Like it's different. So I agree with him in being in a better position. The process thing was interesting. He said he needed to listen to more folks. He needed to be more inclusive and not just one person. What does that mean? I think Jack Easterby was very heavily involved in this process. And I've gotten confirmation on that after I asked the question that I asked. Why is weird. But when Nick says he needs to be more inclusive, he needs to listen to more people. You'll hear his answer to the question in a second, but maybe some of those sub programs and resources and stuff will help. I just don't, there are some things that need massive resources. Your organization needs massive resources. And when an owner is willing to write the check like McNair is, Jack Easterby can go there and do some sub programs and it can help your organization. But hiring a coach, what resources are you talking about? I mean, it seems kind of cut and dry. Maybe researching the coach? I don't know. But I thought it was really interesting. So I decided to ask Nick. And the other thing that was really interesting, because I think the biggest takeaway here is Nick's been neutered. He's being evaluated. And he's not as arrogant. He's not as smug. He doesn't come along. He didn't come off as much of an elitist. He seemed a little bit drained. He seemed a little bit stressed out. And it seemed like he's a little bit humbled. We weren't getting Silicon Valley crap or, all that type of stuff. You did get a little bit of, Nick speak, but he seems neutered. He seems a little bit humbled, and it seems like they're watching his ass. You're not just going to get to come here and do whatever you need to do anymore. We got to start listening to the people. We got to start talking to other people in the organization. It's not you and Jack Easterby going up there and setting up some sort of master plan to take over the world and take over football in Houston. So it did seem like he was a little bit humbled. And I just asked him, how is the process different? How involved was Jack Easterby in the past process? And why the hell, I mean, in not certain terms, why have you, look at this guy right here. I mean, just look at that. Tell me that guy has slept lately. Goodness gracious. Look at that. Look at this guy. This guy's defeated. It looks like his balls are gone. Look at that. Man, I didn't even get the freeze. Man, he's tired. Someone get him a nap. Good Lord. But I asked him, you've mentioned now 6 times that if I don't get it right, I'm gone. And you've kind of just said it in like a nonchalant way. I said yesterday, I don't know how much Nick Caserio cares. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. But when you mention that 6 times, it just seems strange. Like, do you think that your job's in jeopardy or what? Here was Nick Caserio's answer to that question.
That's the best I can answer it.
Nick, you talked about the process. You talked about, I guess, kind of ignoring people and not listening to enough people. Why was that? How involved was Jack Easterby in the previous coaching processes? And you've also mentioned like 5 times now, if I'm not the guy, I'm done. Do you fear for your job? Like what is to be made if you mentioned that now like 5 times? Kind of
yeah, Landry. I think in the end, like it's about accountability. So again, like I'm not going to sit up here and, nobody's happy with where we are. I think we're all disappointed about the result of the season. I'm going to work my ass off, like I've done since the day I walked in the building, and that's my commitment. That's what I'm going to continue to do. So that's not going to change. As far as our process, I wouldn't say it's not about an individual, what we've necessarily done in the past. I think it's, I would say, utilizing the resources that we have available, maybe that we didn't have available prior, and some of the way that we're piecing this together and how we're constructing it. So I think that's more illustrative of probably where we are. I don't know if that answered your question, but I think that's a little bit more clarity and direction in terms of how we're going about it, utilizing the resources that are available to us, and then utilizing it to the best of our ability and trying to use it to our advantage so we can make the right decision.
All right. So there we go. Didn't really answer my Jack question, but it's weird that he was mentioning that as many times as he was. It was really strange. I'll be honest. I think Nick's being checked. And I think that's a good thing. I don't expect people to feel confident that there's more Cal. But the one thing I would say is in the past, there's been less Cal. And Cal's been the one that's gotten the brunt of the criticism, rightfully so. He trusts the wrong people and he kind of just stays out of the way. Bill O'Brien should have never been a GM. There was a gray area that showed you that Bill O'Brien was kind of a limited coach, no matter what his water carriers say. It's a crappy division, crappy quarterback play. You had the best defense. You had the most talent on the roster. You won division titles. Congrats. Jack Easterby should never be a front office guy. That's a joke. The fact he was allowed to do what he did is a joke. Too much trust. Nick Caserio is not getting that. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you and lie to you and say that's some sort of recipe for success for the Texans, because I don't know. I do think it's better than just fully trusting Nick, especially given the fact he just admitted he wasn't listening to everybody in the organization. I think some balance is good. I think there's a lot of organizations where balance works. Now, it's not really Cal's personality. I mean, you see him go up there and talk. It's not Cal's personality to just go up there and, linger or, try to control everything like some other owners. It's just not how he does it. But I will say this about Cal, like the reputation he's getting on the internet by a certain portion of people is hilarious. It's actually pretty weird. Is there some incompetence in the past? Have there been mistakes? Sure. But like to act like he's just some sort of slime ball, conniving guy who like rubbed his hands together and said, I'm going to fire Lovie Smith and David Culley after 1 year. Look at me is ridiculous. Criticism's valid. If you were making a list of the best owners in the NFL, Cal McNair doesn't deserve to be even in the conversation. He's probably in the bottom 5. That's how the tenure's gone. That's the point we've gotten to. But this crap that's getting said and, people saying Cal McNair's racist and all that, that's a joke. That's an absolute joke. I'm sorry. I'm not into like the clickbait, first take type of stuff. I respect a lot of people as legends, but I think it's a joke. I really do. And I think I don't think it should be the go-to to go in that direction. I just don't. I'm sorry. I know that there's some stuff that needs to be done. I want African-American coaches to have as many opportunities as possible. But I don't think it should be the immediate go-to when you're talking about this stuff. I mean, Stephen A. Smith today said that Stephen A. Smith straight up said that the Texans put Romeo Crennel in a position to fail and talked about how they did Romeo Crennel. You know how little homework you have to do to say something like that? Dude worked for the organization for 7 years. He basically had a cush advisor role, and they let him be the interim head coach, which is something he enjoyed on the back end to hold down the fort because he was so admired in that locker room. And then he got to ride off into the sunset. I mean, how do you even like shape your lips to say something like that? Like, how is that the default? Like, I understand that like the default can be screaming and yelling and arguing and stuff like that, although that's gotten played out too. But how do you say something like that, man? I mean, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And then we're bringing up like Lovie Smith and David Culley, who are both great guys. No one else was interviewing them. No one else was hiring them. So like it's not like they brought some like hot up and coming coach. No hot up and coming coach wanted this gig the last 2 years. You don't want to go up there with these limited assets. You don't want to go up there and immediately inherit a disgruntled quarterback and a quarterback who has the allegations against him that Deshaun Watson does. That's not what you want. So yeah, David Culley, you're in your 60s. You get an opportunity that you wouldn't have. You get over $20 million with that opportunity. Lovie Smith, you've already coached for 2 teams in the NFL. You failed in Chicago. I mean, you succeeded in Chicago. I don't want to put it that way, but there was some stuff that went wrong in Chicago on the back end, and a lot of people have some stuff to say, but you went to Chicago, you had a chance in Tampa Bay, and then you failed at Illinois. Hold down the fort for a year. You've coached 3 of the 32 teams in the NFL. You got a shot. No one else was going to give you it. So, I mean, I get that it's the default. I get that the Texans, they have the low-hanging fruit is there, and a lot of times they deserve all the smoke they get, but good Lord. Like, good Lord. Like, is it just like so easy to do and it's such a crutch to where that's what we do? And then I see that Stephen A is saying, and this was the headline that I saw. And again, I don't talk about this stuff on the radio because people are tired. Like, people don't want to hear that hot take stuff at this point. I mean, especially if you're not going to put any work into it. I mean, have you ever heard Stephen A talk football? Like, sometimes he'll say receivers that have been off the team for 6 years. I mean, they're working Stephen A to death. Dude's the hardest working man of all time. He's a legend. He's one of the best media types of all time, regardless of how you feel about him. He's carried that company. But how do you expect a guy who doesn't even know who coaches are, who players are, to go up there and say something like that? It's crazy. And then he said, I guess Stephen A said that, I don't think any African-American should take this job. What? I mean, I don't speak for all of anything. I don't even speak for family members. Family members damn sure don't want me talking for them. Sports Radio 610 teammates, they damn sure don't want, my opinions generalized into theirs. But Stephen A is shaping his lips to say that an African-American man looking for a head coaching job should not take the Texans job, in which the situation's obviously much, much different the last 2 years, or this year, than it's been the last 2 years. And they shouldn't take that opportunity. These gigs are guaranteed. You think David Culley regrets taking the gig? No. No. He's pretty set. He's pretty content. The Does he wish he would have gotten more time? Probably. Lovie Smith probably does too. But you're going to sit there and say that they shouldn't take the job? You're living a pretty damn good life if you can sit there making the money that you make, saying the foolish stuff that you say, where you say that Romeo Crennel got done wrong by the Texans. And then you're going to say, hey, don't take this job? Man, congratulations on being that effing important, man. Congratulations on that. It's just a little bit wild to me. But I expect it. It's just kind of wild. Again, it won't be a segment on the show or anything like that, but we're all on the internet, so we get that. We get this. I'm not, hey, let's pull clips from this slappy and play it first take type of thing when it comes to the to that. But I mean, damn, don't take the job. My God. Okay. All right. I mean, you are living a hell of a life if you can say that. Let's bring in Brandon Scott. He was at the press conference as well. B. Scott in the building. I was just talking about a little bit of the Stephen A stuff. It was actually pretty random, but I did. You were at the press conference. What did you make of how this whole thing went? My biggest takeaway was it felt like Nick Caserio been neutered and humbled a little bit. I haven't seen him that timid. The smugness was kind of gone. He mentioned, I don't know, 5 or 6 times that, I could be fired and all this type of stuff. I thought that was weird. I feel like he's getting checked. And quite frankly, I've been asking for it for a while. I've been asking for proactive evaluation. What was your takeaway from the Stephen A. Smith? I said Stephen A. Smith, Nick Caserio press conference. Stephen A.'s probably would have been a little more entertaining.
Yeah, man. Stephen A. is, let's just be honest, man. Stephen A. is working way too damn hard and talking.
They work him to death, bro. Like I was even saying before you got here. First of all, I'm not one of these guys that's going to minimize Stephen A. and say he's a loser,
right?
A hot taker. He's an effing legend. He's on the Mount Rushmore of media, of sports media.
Yeah.
But God, I mean, they got him talking about games, and he doesn't even know who the receivers are. And all of a sudden, he's like trying to like have these takes about the Texans coaches the last 3 years, which I don't even think people that cover the NFL know about. So I understand there's a lot going on there, and there's a certain energy and stuff that comes with it. But man, that dude works a hell of a lot. But when you say Romeo Crennel got done wrong, I'm just like, you really don't know what you're talking about there. That's crazy.
Well, no, I mean, let's just be real about it. Honest. You and I, let's just be honest about it. You and I are as close to it as anybody would be, working here in the market, working at the flagship station. We're at every home game. We cover every game and every practice and every press conference to a T. It's asking a lot to expect Stephen A. to really be informed on this topic, but that's all the more reason why he should probably stay away from commenting on necessarily the specifics. And then the Romeo Crennel example, I'm gonna be real, I didn't see anything. I haven't followed the coverage. I pretty much just listened to 610 and a couple of the podcasts from some of our colleagues.
It just popped up on my computer screen. You know how they have like on my comp, they have like the sliding stories.
Right.
And they put the Chronicle, and then they put I don't know what newspaper it was, but yeah, they put it up.
But yeah, man, my takeaway on Caserio and what we heard from him today was basically it seemed like there is an understanding, or at least for me, it feels like it's been communicated from the McNairs that they're not going to stand for this. Like it's not a small thing to them that they're going to be on a third coach in 3 years, that the team, like, even if you want to forget about the head coaching part about it and just focus on the team, focus on what you saw, and however much blame you want to put on the coaching for the regression that you saw this year, at the end of it, whether it's coaching or talent or a mix of both, which I think we probably all agree that it's a mix of the fact that they've been poorly coached the last 2 years and they haven't had a lot of talent the last 2 years, and therefore they have not been very good the last 2 years. And all of that usually falls on the feet of the general manager, and in this case should fall on the feet of the general manager, who is either actually in charge of and the one responsible for the head coaching hires, or is a part of the brain trust and the system that produced it. Okay. And I think it's one or the other, or maybe a combination of both. And then he is responsible for the talent that we see out there. Okay. The fact that, and I talked about this with you and Lopez and Figgy last week on In the Loop on my weekly hit on Thursday, the fact that your best wide receiver for 3 years in a row is Brandon Cooks. Like Brandon Cooks, as good as he is, and I know that you know, we've had a lot of fun banging on Brandon Cooks for kind of bailing on the team this year, but like, that should not be your best receiver 3 years running. You know, like at some point, maybe 1 year, but at some point you should be addressing the talent issue at that position to figure out a way to where he's not your number one receiver by far 3 years in a row. I mean, that in and of itself is a problem. The running back position that we've talked about ad nauseum, the fact that you don't have
Don't get me started, please.
a running back.
I'm trying to enjoy myself tonight.
But think about it though, like, whose fault is it that the best running back you have is a fourth round rookie who split carries in college, and the difference between your second best running back and a guy that you called up off the practice squad at the end of the season?
See, to me, that's an easy fix. That's the problem. The receiver's
fix,
hard.
But it's still your fault. It's still your fault. I mean, if it's such an easy fix though, and it's much easier now that they got the picks and the money and all the resources and everything like that, it's a much easier fix now. But if it was such a damn easy fix, why ain't fix it? Why that be the case?
He likes Rex Burkhead.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, like all of this together, on top of the fact that they're bungling the head coaching thing, or at least appearance wise. And look, you do a good job of speaking to the nuance of each coaching search being different, and how this one is going to be different from the previous one, and even how the previous one is different from the one before that. But at the end of it, man, and I know you don't like to overgeneralize, but at the end of it, if you're looking at one person who's the overseer of all of it, you're seeing how all of it falls at the feet of Cal McNair and Nick Caserio, and that's who's still around. I mean, that is gonna at least appear to be a problem, and something that they're gonna have to answer for when they're talking to the actual credible candidates that could be the ones of the future, could be the ones that's past that could get more than just a year. So, and that was why I asked the question about the instability and the credibility issues. Like, to me, for all the distinctions that you can make for each year, and for as much of a case as you can make for this offseason being a good one for them, all the upside and all the reasons for optimism and hope, like, they still have to answer for the instability and credibility issues that they have created, that they have backed themselves into by their own doing.
Yeah. And look, I agree. I think there is a gray area with Nick Caserio, but there's also, and this is why I think he's getting checked. And I don't know this for a fact. It's just, I mean, we consume information, and we take in as much as we can. I think he's also shown signs of someone who might just, I don't know, man. Like, he's showing signs of someone who might think he's a little bit too smart and could F up this, even with the resources where they are. Yeah. Like, and that's where the trust issues come in. Like, I left this, I'll be honest. Yesterday sucked that they didn't get the first round pick, but I left today feeling good that Nick Caserio is at least getting checked. He's not going up there talking about Silicon Valley references. I'll say the list of candidates is as good as I could expect. Someone asked me today, a loophole. Shout out to the loopholes. If you listen, you are one. Someone asked me today, you know, who would you want to be the coach? Honestly, anyone on that damn list, quite honestly. I mean, if you told me any of those guys on the list today of that they want to talk to could be the coach, sign me up. That's as good of a list as I can imagine right there. So, yeah. I don't want to say I'm surprised that a job that we believe is this appealing has the right guys, but the process of getting to where they've gotten today in a short time. Hell, the game ended what, 30 hours ago?
Right.
About. I mean, and in that 30 hours, Lovie Smith has been fired, and they've requested to speak to D'Amico Ryans, Jonathan Gannon, Steichen, Ben Johnson, and the Denver DC.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of a pretty good day for me, if
Yeah,
you
no,
ask me.
I like the candidates, and I think that they're gonna have a pick of the litter with candidates. You know, like for one thing, so we would make fun of David Culley whenever he would say, "I took this job because it was just one of 32," and we made fun of him because of how silly he sounded saying it. But really, that's underselling it, or maybe overselling it, depending on how you look at it. But it's not one of 32. Each hiring cycle is what, 5 to 7 jobs that open up. Like, it's really one of far less than 32, one of a fraction of a 32 opportunity that you might get to get a job. So like, it's even more precious than that. Like, David Culley was probably underselling it at that point. But the thing, or the point that I want to make, Landry, about the attractiveness of the job, and I think this is where we differ a little bit. I'm not even sure if we differ. You're here, can obviously speak for yourself on your own channel, but the thing that I think is important to consider in all of its context that you're providing, and the reason why, you're saying that, a lot of the national media types and the people that are not as connected are overlooking some of the attractiveness of this job. We can lay out what's attractive about the job, the draft picks, the draft capital, the salary cap space that you got now, the fact that Jack Easterby's not there anymore, Deshaun Watson stuff has resolved itself, translating into the draft capital that we're talking about. All of that stuff makes the job attractive, we can agree. But what makes it unattractive is still there and prevalent. And right now, that's Nick Caserio and Cal McNair. They're the ones with the trust and credibility and instability issues and question marks that exist. And it's not like the head coach gets to come in and fire the owner or the GM. Like, he's got to come in and work with those guys. And so the head coach has got to come in and have can come in and have valid questions about the working environment that they're going to enter into, even though they've got all of these assets and all of these reasons why it seems like it could work. Like, you can feel good about having 5 draft picks in the first 3 rounds, including the number 2 overall pick. You can feel good about having the most salary cap space that the team has had in however many years. You can feel good about the fact that Jack Easterby's not there pulling the strings anymore. But if you don't feel good,
It's your boy, isn't it?
But hey, look, well, I guess he was, maybe not anymore. I haven't heard from my man. What's up, Jack? What up, Jack, man? Holla at your boy. You know where to find me.
He's been known to pop into spaces or two.
But I'm saying, if you're a credible candidate, and we just acknowledge that we feel like all of these candidates that they just reach out to are the ones that we at least feel good about right now that are listed and reported. If you're a credible candidate, you got to still have valid questions about who you're coming in there to work with and work for. And I think that's real, and that's something that they gotta consider and reckon with. Even if we can acknowledge that this, whoever the new coach is going to be in a much better position and should be in a much better position to succeed than the last couple. Also assuming that they're better coaches, right? So yeah, it should be brighter days for the Texans, but they again created their own environment here, sort of own toxic environment here that has all of these question marks with it.
What the F was going on with this question to end it after mine? I just want to play this just to try to make some sense of
Hey,
this.
man, this was funny, man. This was one of the highlights of the press conference.
What was going on here?
Nick, you stated a lot of word salad. Bottom line, what can you say to assuage the populace that y'all know what y'all doing? Because at the end of the day, this is the trifecta. And right now, I want to go to Las Vegas with you and doing nothing.
No, I've never gambled in my life, so I've been to Vegas once and played the slot machine once. So the only thing I can say is I'm committed to trying to do.
I wouldn't go to Las Vegas with you with nothing. What was that?
It was to me, it was a clear expression of, hey, kind of what I was just saying, but in a much more blunt and sort of borderline more emotional way of saying, hey, man, y'all lack belief, or people don't believe in you. I don't believe in y'all. I wouldn't gamble on you. I wouldn't spend no money on you and all that kind of thing. I guess that was all they was trying to say. But the delivery and the word selection of that was like, okay, wasn't expecting that. It's like he even calls him out in the beginning, like, you said a lot of word salad, which, let's be real.
Yeah, he does.
That's
No,
what a
he
lot of
does.
people feel. That's how a lot of people feel. That's what a lot of people are hearing. Like, man, you said a bunch of nothing. But how I know that you worth a damn? How I know that you even know what you're doing, man? Like, just make it plain for me. Which,
How do we know that he knows what he's doing?
we don't. That is the problem, Landry. That's the point that I'm making. That as cool as it is, as great as it is to have even the number 2 overall pick, and I'm right there with you, man. I was bar hopping around town on Sunday, just hoping that I was going to witness them secure this number 1 overall pick, and was pissed off when they didn't. But even with all of that, like, how do we know that he knows what he's doing? We certainly, I mean, it's damn near consensus that Cal McNair doesn't know what he's doing. And bless Cal's heart, I like Cal a lot as a person, but I mean, you put out that poll on Twitter, was it last week, Landry, about
Who do you trust more?
Who do you trust more? And Cal got damn near the worst. Either Cal or both got the least amount of votes, which reflects more on Cal than anything, because Nick actually got 40+% of the votes. You know, so I mean, that is still there. That's still a problem. We don't know that Nick knows what he's doing, and there seems to be closer to consensus that Cal is sort of out of his element. So they got a lot to prove, man. They got a lot of credibility issues that they got to deal with. Even if I'll concede that they got a good chance of nailing this head coaching hire, they got a good chance of doing it.
They got an excellent chance of doing it. Do you have a preference right now with who the head coach should be?
I actually like Ben Johnson a lot. I like the fact that, you know,
Be honest, did you know what he looked like?
No, did not. Had no idea what he looked like until today. And honestly, didn't know much about him until I was watching or just kind of paying attention to the Lions being like going throughout the season, and you're looking at stats, and most of them I'm looking at to see where do the Texans rank? Where is their offense rank in DVOA? How bad is it really? And then you look up and you're like, well, wait a minute, the Lions are 6th, or, you know, whatever they would be on a given week. You know, they'd be like 6th or 7th, you know, respectably in the higher third or so of the league in offense. And I'm like, well, what's going on with that? You know, what is that about? So
they were top 5 worst DVOA offense of all time. Them and the Colts both.
Yep, I saw that. And the Colts were worse somehow, which was the moment. That was when I saw that stat. I forget who put it out there, but when I saw that was the moment when I really started to feel bad, because I'm like, oh, the Texans are bad. It's one of the worst teams I've ever watched. They'll be fine in terms of losing this game and getting the pick. But then I'm like, wait a minute, though. The Colts not only didn't live up to the expectation that I had for them this year, I thought they would be a lot better, but they are historically bad, epically bad, and even worse than the Texans offensively. That part surprised me, and that was the part or the moment where I think I was worried about them getting this pick, man.
Yeah, and I mean, that was a disaster yesterday. I do think they've done a good job of damage control. My thing is, they didn't, in a perfect world, there didn't need to be damage control. But that was, yesterday was probably the most disappointed I've seen the fan base since the Watson trade, maybe. I mean,
I said on my podcast, on the B Block podcast, Landry, that
B Block.
It was the way. Yeah, subscribe to the B Block podcast wherever you get your podcast. But I said that it was the worst that I had felt on the field. Like I separated a little bit from the on-field stuff and focused or from the off-field stuff, I should say. And it was the worst I had felt about an on-field moment since the 24-0 collapse. You know, since the Kansas City game, which we could all lump in. I mean, honestly, Landry, at this point, especially like 3 years later, we could all lump in the Kansas City playoff game collapse to the Hopkins trade, to fast forward to where they were past 2020, you know, just right through COVID. Like, all of that seems like to be an entire era in and of itself. But on-field moments is the worst that I felt since the collapse in Kansas City. And funny enough, that was a loss. This was a win. But as we know, and as you pointed out, this league rewards losing, And the only way to win that game would have been to lose. And as I'd said on the radio, whether I was filling in for you guys or saying this to you directly, was that the only team that they could beat over these last few weeks, and I was somebody that was fine with them beating the Titans. I know you weren't, but I thought for sure that they would lose these last couple of games. I was wrong. But I said that the only team that they could beat by winning was themselves. The only team that they could beat, whether it been against the Jaguars or lose or beating the Colts as they did to end this season, the only team that they could actually beat by winning a game was themselves, and I'll be damned if they didn't do it. It's sad. It's sad, man. It's sad. It's sad. Yeah. Hey, can I tell you my Dennis Rodman story? I didn't actually. I was trying to get into it on my podcast, and I didn't even tell the full story. So I figured I could tell it here. I don't know how much time.
Yeah. What happened? Got all the time I want, man.
Man, I pull up into.
You got no hard outs here.
I pull up into the second bar. I say bar hopping. I went to 2 bars to watch this game, and I pull up to the second bar, which was one that I had been at earlier in the week or a couple of days before. So I, went there again, and as soon as I walk in, I see Dennis Rodman holding court at a table with about 7 or 8 people.
Did he have a bus? Was there a bus out there? Because normally he has like the bus tour. I saw
no bus. What I ended up seeing at the end. So this is after the fact. Didn't realize it then, but realized
was he hammered?
He was hammered, of course. But he had like one of those Benz wagons, like a Benz Jeep type of thing, red Benz Jeep looking type of thing, like a Benz SUV. But he was with a woman. I didn't realize this either at first because he
blonde hair, kind of old.
Yep.
Yeah, that's his that's kind of like, I don't know if he calls her his wife or what, but she does a lot of she basically babysits his ass.
Well, let me tell you, Landry, I'd never seen this woman in my life. And so I see him holding court. I had full plans to at some point approach him and say something, when he's not around a crowd of people. I was going to pull him aside. But in the meantime, we got this damn game going on. And the TV closest to me didn't have the game. The TV that did have the game was a little bit further diagonal. So I walk over there to kind of watch. His woman is sitting at a table to my left right here. I'm not really paying attention to her at all. I'm fixated on this damn game. And I guess eventually Dennis is done holding court, walks over there while I'm watching the game. And mind you, I've laid eyes on him. I see that Dennis Rodman is there, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And me not realizing what's happening, I'm like, watching the game, man. This is some serious shit right here. The number 1 overall pick is on the line. And he goes, "What are you doing?" And then at that point, I'm like, that seems a little bit more serious than the first, "What are you doing?" And then immediately one of the bartenders / waiters or whatever walks in, gets in between us and goes, "I can change the TV over by where you are if you'd like." And I'm like, "Yeah, I actually asked y'all to do that when I walked in here, but it still hasn't been done. So I'm walking over here." And it's not until that moment I'm walking back to where I realized, because it was awkward. Then I realized, did he think I was over there trying to talk to his woman? Because I think he did. I think he thought,
what?
Because this is the scene, Landry. His woman is sitting at the table by herself while he's at a different table holding court with just random people. And then he comes back to his own table, back to his woman, as I'm standing over there kind of close to her, but not paying her any attention at all, watching the TV. And he's like, "What are you doing?" Like I'm over there trying to press up on his woman. And I'm like, man, I'm gonna be honest. I barely saw her sitting there. Barely. I'm paying attention to it.
Didn't you get a picture with him though? So it ended up cool.
Yeah, it ended up cool at the end. I think he realized how I didn't give that much attention, and how I was walking around. We were on the deck part of the bar, and I'm walking around looking at all the different TVs U of H is on. I'm watching the football game too. So he's like, "Oh, this guy really is just not giving a shit of what else is around him and just watching games." I think he caught on to that. So by the end of it was cool. We got a picture and everything, and it was all right. But it seemed like for a brief moment, Dennis Rodman was ready to check me for maybe pressing up on his woman that I didn't even know was there. So
okay.
But the random part about it for me, Landry, to bring it back to the Texans, was here I am watching Lovie Smith, who has some history, obviously, in Chicago, doing a favor for Chicago and helping them get the number 1 overall pick. And as I do that, I walk into a bar and another Chicago legend is sitting there with his damn Chicago Bulls Dennis Rodman t-shirt on. And I got all this Chicago around me as we relinquish the number 1 overall pick to Chicago after feeling like we earned that motherfucker. Excuse me, I guess I can cuss on here. After feeling like we earned that thing over the course of the year, being the worst team, having lost to Chicago in Chicago earlier in the year. And I'm like, how in the hell does this happen? Lovie Smith coaching his heart out, way harder than he should. Going for 2, you son of a gun. Going for 2 when it was completely
After going for the
unnecessary.
tie.
After going for the tie.
You knew that was going to happen too.
Dude, it just hurt. And I'm like, and then Dennis Rodman is another Chicago icon is just sitting right here in front of me as we give Chicago all of the good things. So didn't feel great in the moment, but was definitely an interesting, albeit a strange ass day, man. Strange
Really
ass.
strange
But yeah,
ass day.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming, Landry. But at the same time, like, it just shouldn't have been. Like the 2 4th-down conversions. Did you see that stat that Roger Sherman put out there from the Ringer?
I did not.
Man, dude, he said, let me see if I can pull this up. He said that all year there was not a team. I'm gonna make sure this is correct, but he said that all year there was not a team to convert a 4th and 10 in the same game, like 2
4th and 10 and 4th and 20.
Yeah, let me see if I can pull, if I have it. Roger Sherman, 4th and 10, 4th and 20. But okay, he says he just looked it up. This was last night. The Texans were the only team with 2 4th and 10 conversions in the same game this entire season. So think about that. This entire season, everybody played. How many games we play now? 17 per team, right? The entire season, everybody played 17 games. This is the only team with 2 4th and 10 conversions in the same game all season. And they did it, Landry, on the same damn drive in the 4th quarter of week 18 to ensure that they did not get the number 1 overall pick. Of all times to create that stat, of all the times and all the teams to be the ones, like not the Chiefs, not the Bills, not the Bengals, not the Eagles, not the 49ers, not a team that we take seriously, but the Texans became the only team all year to convert 2 4th and 10 situations in the same game and did it on the same drive, which turned into a game-winning drive in the 4th quarter to relinquish the number 1 overall pick. What the hell is that?
Well, I mean,
what is that?
I mean, I don't know. Is it poetic justice? Is it
No.
just appropriate? Like, did yesterday, like as frustrating as it was, did it feel fluky to you?
Did it feel fluky?
It didn't feel fluky. Like
No,
it felt appropriate. Like maybe I'm just conditioned to feel that way, but as bad as it was, like I've been in situations where I've been rooting for teams and there's like some fluky stuff, but as much as watching that, like as soon as Brandon Cooks didn't get traded, I anticipate, oh, this guy's going to come back and ball out and hurt you. That happened. As soon as the Texans went up 7, people on the internet were saying, well, they're going to score and go for 2. Wouldn't that just be perfect? Like,
yeah.
As crazy as it was, and it is crazy when you look back at it. I'm not saying it like felt 100% normal, but it didn't feel as fluky as it should have.
Nah, but a team that has some weird fascination with Rex Burkhead and critical down and distance and game situations, you know, like we just sat there together, Landry, the week before and watched them go to Rex Burkhead in situation. I know it wasn't 2-point conversion or you know to win the game, but like in critical 3rd and 4th down situations, they're going to Rex Burkhead in the end zone, like one-on-one situations, trying to take advantage of Rex Burkhead matchups. So, yeah, like, I didn't know that they was going to exploit a tight end matchup that it felt like they only did on occasion this season. Like,
how do you feel about this?
Be a theme.
Stutz brought this up yesterday, and I thought it was an interesting point. How do you feel that perhaps – let me ask you this first. If you had to rank the best offensive players on the Texans this year, where would Jordan Akins come up? I would go Dameon Pierce 1. And then we can even have a discussion about Jordan Akins being number 2 or 3, whatever. But how does it make you feel that Nick Caserio got to evaluate Jordan Akins? He let him go. He brought in Farrell Brown. Farrell Brown sucked. Farrell Brown got brought back after sucking. Farrell Brown sucked worse. They got rid of him. And then that's what brought Jordan Akins here. Isn't that kind of wild? I mean, I know that's sometimes just the way it goes, but that's kind of wild.
We've talked about this. We've talked about this, Landry, and you were the one that got me on it back in the draft process, or maybe it was training camp. I can't even remember now, but it was sometime in the offseason where you're like, man, they got to figure out the tight end. And I was like, whenever you were saying it, I was like, damn, they do. Like, I looked at it, I was like, damn, Landry's right, man. I don't have because I'm not following. What did I say at the beginning of the year with Farrell Brown? I'm not following for that banana in the tailpipe again, because I sold myself on some Farrell Brown in 2021. I damn sure did, but I wasn't doing it again this year. And so I was right there with you, like, okay, the tight end situation. I know they drafted Tican Couturiano. The scouting report on him is more so of being a blocking tight end. Brevin Jordan is not that. So I figured like
Quinturiano can play, man.
He can play. No.
Surprised. Very surprised.
One of Caserio's better gets, I think, in the draft in terms of value for where he was drafted to what his potential might be in your offense.
Yeah, he's
like
a good player.
And like I was saying, what the word was on him, at least from what I was reading, I'm not going to pretend to have been, what was he, Oregon State? One of those?
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend to have been watching a ton of Oregon State football and have a good sense for what he was in college. So when I read about him, it was like, this is a blocking tight end. Okay, what did we know about Brevin Jordan? He's a pass catcher, not really a blocking tight end. I thought it was a good yin and yang type of situation, but it looks like he might just be a better overall player. Yeah. So kudos on that. But
Brevin Jordan's done.
But
he's toast.
Oh, when he started getting the inactive, the healthy scratches during the year, at that point, toast. I kind of just gave up. Like, he can, I mean, whatever, maybe not. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, I think he's toast.
Like, maybe he is, and if he
maybe
isn't,
a new coach comes in and falls in love with him and says, "I'm going to get the most of this guy."
But I mean, like any plus that you get from him, though, right? Is you know, at this point, it's just like playing with house money at that point. But yeah, man, the tight end situation, the fact that Jordan Akins could somehow be someone that you evaluated and was willing to let go. The best he could apparently do, and this is not a knock, but the best he could apparently do was practice squad on the Giants, and they let him go.
Yeah,
and then you kind of looked into a situation.
It's kind of an under the radar, pretty cool story.
Yeah, it is. It is.
He was about to sell his house. I talked to him in the locker room after his game back. He was about to sell his crib, man. Yeah, like I think he got stuff redone to sell it. He did the remodeling. By the way, listen to Stutz. Subscribe and like the video. Subscribe and like the video, and while you're at it, subscribe to Cody Stutz's channel.
Yeah, 100%. Shout out to Cody Stutz. But it's also, to me, I was just gonna say, to wrap up that point, it's indicative of how much of a mumbo jumbo, haphazard, mess that the tight end position has been. And you could apply that same logic and thinking and statement to the skill positions and the weapons overall on offense.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you look at the offense, like, who do you feel good about bringing back next year? Pierce is back. Quinturiano is back. Both tackles are back. Kenyon Green's back. Cooks is gone. Chris Moore, they got to figure out. I think you bring him back and let him play some special teams and be like kind of a spot receiver. Nico's back, but you can't. You've got to function as if you don't have a number 2 receiver at this point, because you can't rely on him to stay healthy. And when he's healthy, you can't figure that out. Like, this needs to be an offensive heavy draft, to say the least.
Yeah. No, I've said this too. One of my and I like Jalen Carter. I think Will Anderson can be good, even though I didn't love what I saw from him this year. But I like both of them as players. But like, for me, the biggest buzzkill would be if they went defense at the high end of this draft. Like, if they didn't come, I want to come away from this draft ideally with, well, for me, the ideal scenario was a quarterback and a weapon. Bryce Young and
2 weapons, man. Come on.
No. I meant in the first. My bad. Let me clarify. With the first 2 picks, okay. So I'm talking about the highest end of the picks. Yeah, 2 weapons, 3 weapons, hell, as many as you can get. I'm cool with it. But like, I didn't really want a defensive player in this first round because you went defense and interior offensive line with your top 2 picks, your 2 first-round picks last year. I thought you needed to go quarterback, and I didn't really have to argue about the receiver. I like Quentin Johnston. I like Jordan Addison. I like Jackson Smith and Jigba. I like all of them. So like, I wasn't really here to argue about it. Get the quarterback. I would argue about Bryce Young. To me, that I was passionate about that. Go get any of those receivers that I just listed. Maybe even Bijan if he falls to you high in the second round. I don't know if he would.
Second.
Yeah. If he fell to if you got the first pick and he was, what is the first
Bijan
pick?
ain't going past 15.
Yeah. Well, look, I don't think he should, but I could definitely see a running back falling down that low.
Not like that.
Or if you liked Bijan enough, okay, because I liked the idea of going to go get him more so than overpaying for Tony Pollard, which I know you suggested.
I just want more backs. I just want more backs.
I wouldn't mind trading up for Bijan. I like him that much. I wouldn't mind trading up for him if it's involving that second round pick. But to try to get into the back end of the first round if you feel like he's still there, or if he slips past 15, trying to get up there. So to me, it was all about getting weapons. That's what I wanted to see. That's what I wanted them to do. That's what I still want them to do. I think for as much outcry there is about them squandering the number 1 overall pick, and it is a big deal. It is chicken shit that they did that. Okay, let's not make no mistake about it. I do think it can still work out for them. I think it can.
All right.
Because there's a chance.
No, it can work out. The result can be fine, but allowing any if is the problem.
No. I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying as we move on and as we transition into the next phase of the conversation, we can also still acknowledge that it's not the end of the world. It is a chance that the Bears, while they can use that number 1 pick as trade bait and try to, increase their draft capital, if they're not in love with one particular player or they're sold on Justin Fields, what have you, they also could pick one of them dudes. They also could pick Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. I don't know if they will. I don't have a good sense for exactly what they'll do. But it is still possible that the Bears do believe in Justin Fields and feel like they have the quarterback of the future. It'd be interesting if I was there, if I was a Bears fan, because I would actually rather they still draft one of these quarterbacks.
So would I.
Yeah, it's like if I was out there doing a show,
I would too.
or making a case for something out there, that's where I would be. But I don't know if they're there.
I like Justin, but I mean, if you really just look at the throwing stats, they're worse than Davis Mills.
Yeah.
Like he has a lower completion percentage. I think his QBR is slightly lower. I would look at the quarterback and let Justin Fields hold it down for the guy. Yeah. But that's just me. That's neither here nor there.
That was just a side note. But my point being that all of this can still work out in spite of the fact that they fumbled the bag and have kind of backed their way into a less than ideal situation. You could have controlled the draft. You could have controlled this element of the offseason if you had done the right thing, or if this had worked out and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, sucked. Oh well. It is what it is.
Yep.
It's what as simple as that.
It's just as simple as that,
aren't you? You're gonna miss the Lovie Smith. Simple as that, aren't you?
And I hate that we didn't get one last. Sometimes divorce is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, we did kind of.
Hey,
who's the bigger Texans killer? Is it T.Y. Hilton or Brandon Cooks?
Ooh.
Look at the timeline of what Brandon Cooks was able to do. Brandon Cooks got an extension, bought into the rebuild. Jack left. He said he wasn't down with the rebuild. He called out the organization. He got a free vacation. He came back, didn't get traded, called out the organization again, came back, balled, and cost you the number 1 pick. He's a Texans killer, man.
Yeah, man.
Texans killer. He's up there with T.Y.
Look, I'm gonna say this, and this isn't to call out this guy because I love him to death personally and professionally, but before the drama, okay, you got to keep this in context. Before the drama with Brandon Cooks this year, early on in the year, this might have even been before the season started, I was asked on another podcast, on the Locked On Texans podcast, about the legacy of Brandon Cooks as a Texan.
Legacy.
The legacy of Brandon Cooks as a Texan. And I said my whole thing about it was he would be one of the better players to play on teams that you'll never remember in the team's history. Like he'll be one of the good players who played on non-memorable teams, and that would be his legacy. A good player, one of the best players on one of the worst. This is before the drama. I said he'd be one of the best players on some of the worst teams in franchise history, and that would be his legacy.
Okay. All right. Now he's one of the most shamed Texans ever.
Well, but look though, my thought, if I'm honest with you, at the time was, and I'll answer any question. Okay, I'm not going to shit on any question. But at the time, I thought, why am I even talking about this? At the time, and then it goes the opposite direction of why that question was relevant, right? Because it was asked in more of a positive sort of tone and context at the time. And then looking, lo and behold, what kind of season we got and what kind of ending we got to the Brandon Cook story here, of it being like, yeah, man, he was the ultimate professional until maybe he wasn't, or until it was time to pout. Like I don't know. Like I don't know all of it.
He was awful.
It was bad.
He's a total hypocrite, and he's a convenient scripture user, which
It's
I always
wild,
think
though.
is funny. Like he can recite the scriptures that talk about someone being human and vulnerability, like off the top of his head. But there's also ones that talk about being accountable, being there's all types. It's very Jack-like. Let's rapid fire through the comments real quick. I've starred the best ones. Like the video, subscribe, please. Be very much appreciated. Also, subscribe to the B Block podcast. Matt asks, if a defensive coach is hired, do you think he will have a pick of a defensive guy, or will Nick require the position of his choice to make that known in the interview process? I think there's probably a little bit of give or take. I don't know that, whether it's an offensive or defensive coach, it necessarily matters in the draft. The defensive coach, and I'm sure the defensive coach would, if he thinks the franchise quarterback's there, he's going to want the franchise quarterback. I don't give a damn if it's Buddy Ryan, the defensive coach will probably side with the franchise quarterback. Ty's going to go to the quarterback.
Yeah. The question, one of the questions that I had about 8 or 9 questions rattled off on a Google Doc that I wanted to ask. I knew I wouldn't be able to ask all of them. But speaking to this comment, along the same lines, one of the questions that I would have liked to have asked had the press conference maybe not been as crowded, or if there had been an opportunity, maybe I should have asked it anyway, is how much, I would have asked this of Nick Caserio, how much are you going to consider the quarterback situation in your coaching search, and how important is it to align whatever your plans are at quarterback, at these two respective positions, right? At quarterback and at head coach, when you're at this stage of building a team? That was a question that I really thought would have been important to answer, or to ask and get answered. And maybe we get a chance to do it before the draft, or I don't know if we'll get a chance to do it before they hire a coach. But to me, that is an important next day question. Is here you are in this offseason now, at a point now that you're done with this whole could Davis Mills be the guy thing. Now you're at a point in the offseason where now you're about to make a change of head coach for sure, and probably need to make a change at quarterback. Okay, whether it be hopefully Bryce Young is there at 2, or hopefully you can do it in the draft, but whatever they do, like how much are those two moves going to be intertwined is something I would have liked for them to have spoken to today.
They'll speak before the draft. You'll have time to do that. Captain Stu says, what was Nick supposed to do? Act happy? I feel like he's playing this sad sack role. Wait till they hire a coach and we get to the draft, and we'll turn back into smarter than everyone, in my opinion. Who knows? Maybe. Sean says, if the Texans had the Dr. Pepper coaching carousel, they wind up with Pepsi Clear. Whatever happened to Crystal Pepsi? Crystal Pepsi was nice. They should bring that back. Sean says, Cal strikes me more of a Mario Kart guy. I guess he's talking about video games. I don't think Cal plays video games. I'm questioning that.
What's wrong? Look, if
What's
they
wrong
could
with
get,
that?
if
If
they
I'm a
could get their shit,
billionaire, I'm going to have a damn arcade there.
yeah, if they could just get their shit together, I wouldn't give a damn what he does with his free time. Play as many video games as you want.
Alex says Nick kept talking about possibly getting fired and he just deal with it. Very odd, in my opinion. I brought it up in my question. I didn't understand what was going on with that and why that was being brought up.
Somebody lit a fire under his ass, man. That's what happened.
Good. Sean says we got to keep Hannah. She may be the only smart one in the building. What do you mean keep? Like she ain't going nowhere.
That's his wife, man.
Yeah, she's
that's
got some swag, man.
That's that
she's
man's
good.
wife.
She's a good presence.
Yeah.
Eric says there was no young, decent coach that would want the job 2 years ago. He had to hire people, crash dummies. Those crash dummies got paid well. Sure. I don't disagree with you on that. And I don't think either one of those guys regret taking the job. Like, I think it's rich of Stephen A to say, hey, nobody take this job. Like, you think David Culley regrets taking that job or Lovie Smith? Like, that's a weird thing to say, to like try to rally the troops, which, by the way, you didn't do a lot of homework on with the Romeo comment.
Well, one more thing about Stephen A real quick. I don't want to hear nothing from nobody that make $8 million a year to talk on TV to tell me what job not to take.
Preach.
Look, you're securing your bag.
And even I think it's almost here, and you can speak more to this as an African American, but I just think it's kind of weird to even put that type of pressure on somebody to like, even like just to rally. And I know Twitter isn't real life, but like even to like, obviously you don't know the situation perfectly because you threw the Romeo Cornell comment out there and you do a lot of things, but to even like put any sort of pressure on, I don't know, like D'Amico Ryans or someone like that to not take a job like this. I think that's just kind of weird to me. That just seems kind of weird and irresponsible.
Yeah, but I also think that there are enough. So I understand where that feeling comes from, especially when it's not as informed as mine or yours from being around and being like, they should have done more. They should do more research, right? But the fact is that the Texans are not necessarily a team that's worth hanging on to the day-to-day and everything. Like, if you're not entrenched in it like you and I are.
No, I wouldn't wish. No, this should not be a hobby for anybody.
Yeah, right. So I get that. But at the same time, my whole issue with all of it is that there's enough real existing stuff to have questions about this job. And it was why I asked the question. Like, even aside from, like, I get why maybe a black coach would be like, man, they just fired a couple of brothers who didn't get a chance. I don't know if I would have a chance either.
Don't you think they know the homework a little bit more, though?
Yeah,
like the agents and stuff.
But what my point is, once they did the homework, they would see that there is a deeper problem that goes beyond just hiring and firing black coaches. They would see all of the stuff that we've been talking about for the last hour, about Nick Caserio, about Cal McNair, about the trust issues, about the credibility issues, about the accountability issues, until they spoke to it today. You know, like, there is a true credibility issue that it exists, whether I'm black, white, or otherwise, trying to get this job.
No doubt.
That goes beyond just the surface level. They just fired black coaches in back-to-back years, one and done. Like, that looks bad on the surface, but when you peel back the layer, it's actually kind of worse. Like not as bad from a race and social standpoint, but worse from a competent, what is their aptitude? What is their appetite for success? Like, do they know what they're doing?
I mean, if they did that with white coaches, it would look weird.
I said exactly that on my podcast. This would be bad even if you was white. So it like, black, white, or otherwise, this is not a place where, like, or I should say, even with all of the good things that they have going for them, they got so many other issues that they got to address and make up for from an accountability standpoint and perception standpoint.
No doubt. Yeah. Lawrence Johnson, Landry, he was evasive about Jack Easterby, wouldn't say his name at all. He would not. He wasn't going to go into, spoiler alert, Jack was involved very heavily in the hire. Not that makes Caserio look any better. I mean, you're whatever.
But one thing, Cal sitting right there, I don't know how comfortable that is of a conversation to have with them sitting right there.
Perez says Cal is starting to get good insight on what's really going on here. Maybe Easterby 2.0 can keep your foot on the neck at Cal McNair. Don't F up what your dad built or your family or the city. Okay. Eric C says Nick needs to be on the hot seat for sure, but factored in a 6-year deal. has to. Since when has years on a contract been an issue for Cal McNair when he wants to fire you? I don't know that really matters. Jamon M says Landry perception is key if they want to attract top coaching candidates. The perception of firing 2 black coaches after 1 year back-to-back matters. Sure, but the one thing is that I expect agents to have a little bit more grasp of this than Stephen A, or, whoever else saying this. So yeah, perception. I hate perception as reality because it's almost like saying, even if the perception's wrong, it's okay. But I get it.
But the thing, Landry, again, perception is a problem here, but the reality is just as problematic, is what I'm saying. Perception and reality are problematic for different reasons. So it's like a double-edged sword almost. It's like, okay, you got this thing that looks like a problem that might not be exactly the problem that we think it is with the whole black coaches thing. Because again, it looks bad, but it's not like, Cal and Hannah and Nick hate black people or anything like that, right? Or so it's like, it's not what what they're saying it is, but what it actually is ain't good either. It's instability, it's lack of vision, it's questions. So like the reality is not much better. It's maybe more innocent than the perception, but it's not like much better in terms of speaking to their credibility. So it's like a double-edged sword.
Jim says, are you confident they'll get the right guy? Who would you like to see? I would like to see D'Amico. Am I confident? No. But I do like this list. Dylan asks, what are your thoughts on the O lineman in the 3rd round with one of the 2 picks we have? Van Pran is looking good right now from Georgia. Immediate starter at center. We need a center. So
yeah. Center is urgent. Yes.
I haven't crunched the center tape, but yeah, I'll take your word for it. Janice has been under the radar, but I wouldn't be surprised if she's applying pressure on Cal. Get him with your daddy would have been disappointed in you. I'll just ignore that. Kareem says, why were there no questions about how they felt about draft positioning after the game?
Yeah, fair.
Well, I mean, the thing after the game, I mean, what Nick's going to say about the number 1 pick. They let Lovey go out there and try to win the game. So there's that. There's plenty of, I think there's media availability during the draft. This was more about the hiring and Caserio trust. Captain Stu, other GMs go find serviceable running backs off the streets, waivers, and practice squads. Even as much as I dislike Davis Mills, they didn't give him any pieces to evaluate him. They messed up. I think they had enough to evaluate him. Has CJ Stroud declared for the draft? Max asks, not yet, but he's going to. Eric says, hire Gannon, let him pick his staff. Why are you keeping other coaches around? I wouldn't say that they're going to keep coaches around. I don't think that's going to happen. Life and family, Sean Payton would want Nick C. outs. You're probably right. Captain Stu, I can tell you this, Cal and Hannah are hearing it at their kids' baseball league when other kids say Texans suck. No joke. Hannah sees that. No doubt. Hannah sees a lot. The coaching list is not bad for sure. Hopefully they can get us solid with the picks and cap space, and we have some young talent to build from. Yes, David, you are correct. No way Caserio has power over the coaching hire. Sean says, it does seems like he's a little bit neutered. Stu, again, when Nick was saying he wanted to get on 610 and have a round table, he needs to, I don't really want a round table with him. Like if we have it, cool.
That's not necessary, man.
I don't need it. Like he's not going to say anything. I don't want to hang out with Nick. I don't want to break bread with Nick. I just want Nick to do a good job. He's got enough on his plate than to have to do a round table. Does requesting an interview guarantee they are interviewing each of these candidates? Sean, no. What happens is they put in the request. I think there's a database. I think they put it in on like a Monday, and then on Wednesday they get an answer in the database, and it says whether or not it's been approved or not. So that's how that works. LR says, if last year the Texans would have picked Thibodeau, that's your guy, B. Scott, and Davis and Pickens, I would have said Nick knows what he's doing, but none of that happened. Yeah, and I think some people would have liked Sauce. But, yeah, if they had Kayvon Thibodeau here and Jordan Davis, I mean, you have pieces on the D-line. I was a Jordan Davis guy. I don't care if he's a two-down guy or not. Pickens, yeah. I mean, that seems like between not drafting Pickens on day 2 and going with Nico Collins instead of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah, the receiver, there's been opportunities to get better receivers than they've gotten at this point.
Yeah.
JT says, I want D'Amico Ryans as next head coach, hire Brian Cushing as DC. Why do people keep like thinking like any former player can just do any job? Like, what makes you think that you want Brian Cushing to be an NFL defensive coordinator at this point? I don't even think he's coaching anymore. I've seen like JJ Watt as coach and Andre Johnson as GM. Like,
Yeah,
these
nostalgia,
guys are
baby.
great. Let them be great at what they're great at.
Nostalgia. People are. You got a lot of sport. You know this, man.
Did you not
Hosting and
watch Jeff
producing.
Saturday, the Colts legend, last week?
Hey, sports
Yesterday.
romantics. Sports romantics, baby. You want to get the band back together. Get Kubiak in here. Get Andre Johnson in here. Let's get you saw how everybody was tearing up when Arian Foster was in one of the suites. They was like, oh, he's back in the mix.
All right.
He's
Sean,
like, okay, all
Sean
right,
says
whatever.
he doesn't mind if the Texans focus on defense, make at least one side of the ball loaded with talent after the draft.
But what does that do for you when you're down 30-3 in Miami?
Go offense.
What do you do? What about being down 30-3 in Miami, or when you're giving up a pick six to Washington on the second play of the game?
Yeah, we're good on that. Brown Chubby Bear says, this is the first time I've ever seen Caserio worried. I agree. He looked neutered. B. Scott, appreciate you. I'm going to go take a little nap, maybe, aka sleep. Haven't slept in a while, and I'll holler at you. You'll join us on Thursday. Subscribe to the B Block podcast and get it, B. Scott. B. Scott, appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you for having me, man. Keep
All
doing
right,
it.
there you go. Yes,
Later.
sir. One of the most active guys in town. He is at literally everything. And he does a hell of a job covering all the squads. Brandon Scott, B Block Podcast, sportsradio610.com. Follow him on Twitter as well. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget that this is the number one source for the only source for Texans daily digital content from someone who is in the mix. I'm at the press conferences. I'm at the games. We have players on weekly. We know what's going on, and we will keep you connected. And it does seem like the digital scene is kind of blowing up. Cody Stutes has a really good channel. Strong recommendation to go check out Cody Stutes' channel. One of my best friends, one of the best minds in town. So go ahead and check that out. But don't check it out if you haven't subscribed to mine. Screw him. It ain't that serious. But that's all I got for the day. It's been a long, 37 hours. You had the dirty feeling of rooting for the Colts to beat the Texans, the disappointment of them not being able to lose a game when you actually want them to lose a game, despite losing games when you want them to actually win games. You had the Lovie Smith firing. You had a hell of a coaching list, and you had neutered Nick Caserio going up there and addressing the media types as Cal McNair and Hannah McNair looked on. So there it is. It's only going to get more fun, more videos out tomorrow. I have my reaction to the coaching candidates out. The post-game show, if you haven't seen it, go check that out. We also talked about the difference between the number 1 and number 2 pick. If you want to revisit that after it's already happened. And don't forget, Odyssey app, Sports Radio 610 from 10 to 2. And also don't forget, no matter what happens, we are in this together. Appreciate the love. Subscribe. Thank you so much. Going to be a fun off season. Thanks so much for riding with me.